Welcome to an episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get into my guests, as always, I'd like to remind you that if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. And today I have Dustin Hatfield on the show of Vintage Lights. He's also a photographer, and the guy plays bagpipes. Dustin, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
So before we get into the whole spiel, I always start out with usually about like what got you into music, all that type of stuff. We got to talk about the bagpipes just to start out first of all, because you're probably one of the only people that I'll have on the show that does bagpipes, because there's not that many people that are into music nowadays, at least from the U.S., that play bagpipes. How did you get into it?
Honestly, as a child, I thought they were just they were fascinating, weird sounding kind of instrument. Always associated them with Scotland and Ireland and that sort of thing. So I was always fascinated with them. And then in high school, I got very fascinated and started researching and all this and that. But I didn't think that I would ever find anyone that could actually teach me how to play them. But one day, was walking home from school. A friend invited me to his house to come play some drums and do some music. And we heard some bagpipes, so I assumed someone was just standing out there, maybe listening to a recording or something. I didn't expect it to be an actual bagpiper in my hometown. But I chased the sound, and sure enough, there was a guy standing there playing bagpipes, and he ended up being my instructor. And that was about 15 years ago, and I've just been playing them professionally for, I guess, about 13, 14 of those years now. So it's been a cool ride. It's opened up a lot of doors and stuff.
What would you say is the most challenging part about playing the bagpipes?
Well, I guess over time your lungs get really strong after playing an instrument like that. So I would say starting off, it's definitely the wind power is probably the hardest, and then doing the grace notes like with your fingers and everything, learning how to do those properly, and making them sound correct and pretty. That's kind of difficult too for a lot of people. But honestly, I guess it's just stamina these days. Like that's the thing. Like if I want to play for an hour straight, I can do that. Or I can do quick 5-10 minute bursts or whatnot. But like if you're walking or something like that, it can alter the sound of the bagpipes. So I guess that probably would be the most difficult thing, is if you're walking and playing at the same time, keeping a steady flow to the sound without it sounding like you're stepping.
Yeah. So are there, other than maybe like the stamina that you were talking about, are there any transferable skills too that you've also learned from bagpipes that have helped you with your overall music career?
Yes, definitely. It helped me a lot with reading music. I already knew how to read scores before I started playing bagpipes, but to see bagpipe music on sheet music, it's got all the little grace notes like built into it and stuff like that. So it helped a lot with sight reading and learning, reading melody music is a lot different than reading drum music. So it helped establish better where the notes are on the staff. Bagpipes have 9 notes. It goes from low G to high A. So I'm very familiar with their placements on the music score. So it helped a lot with reading music, and also with composition. Because Celtic music and Scottish music and stuff like that is it's a little bit different. There's a lot of common time, a lot of 4/4 and stuff involved, but there's also a lot of off time stuff. So I learned how to play around within those different time signatures and stuff with that Celtic kind of stuff, which helped a lot with the phrasing of other instruments, like even drums and stuff like that. Like all the instruments I play all inspire new horizons within each other. They really help a lot, like with reading music, with reading tabs, writing new stuff. Everything just kind of comes together, and I think of all the different various instruments that I play while I'm writing music. So honestly, and drums help bagpipes help drums, and guitar and all the other stuff too.
Yeah, I gotta say, you mentioned Celtic music. One of my favorite venues of all time, probably the one venue that I'd play at if I ever had the chance, is Slane Castle in Ireland, where I saw on YouTube they had that Celtic women where they sing sometimes they sing Celtic songs, but then they sing like more pop songs. Celtic music is very underrated. Not that many people know about it, but it can be absolutely beautiful. Like some of the songs that they have, it's a very misunderstood kind of art form, especially now how modern music is. But I mean, definitely I like that musicians kind of like you are kind of taking a little bit more Celtic roots kind of into their music. So I mean that's really a good sign of hope for me. But tell us a little bit about your background and just your drumming basically. How'd you get into that? Who inspires you, and who would you rank probably as the greatest drummer of all time? First of all.
Okay, I'm not going to say the greatest drummer of all time, but definitely my favorite. I'd have to actually drop about three names. Abe Cunningham from Deftones was one of my favorite groove drummers. He's a total drumming machine, a total drum monster. He just, with that kind of hip hop background, that was always really cool to me. So I hold him in high regards as far as style. I love Travis Barker. I enjoy punk drum style myself and metal and stuff like that. Travis Barker's really good. Danny Carey from Tool. As far as like blast beats and stuff like that, I really like Born of Osiris, and I like Tim Young from Divine Heresy. I really like his footwork and stuff. The really, really good double bass, really good stuff. Not what I primarily listen to, but when I listen to it, that's what I prefer. Yeah. Definitely. I got into drums when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Guitar was my first instrument, my first thing that I wanted to conquer. And then I was introduced to drums about age 8 or 9, somewhere around there. My dad had borrowed a set from someone and brought it home and set it up. And that was when I first found out about the foot pedal for the bass drum and how the hi-hat works and all this. And that all started from there. I immediately was fascinated with drums and trying to learn new things on my own. I think the first song I played was We Will Rock You, and I sang along while playing it. That came kind of naturally. Queen was probably my favorite band back then. I was also into Metallica a lot, and that was my first run-in with double bass from the song One. I was asking my dad because I could hear that he was playing hi-hat and snare drum too, and I was like, well, he's just overdubbing or he's doing something. And keep in mind, I was like 9 years old here. And my dad was like, no, he's doing that with his feet. And I was like, what? So that was when drums were just like, I've got to learn how to do that.
Yeah, I got to say, Master of Puppets is my one song that really introduced me into metal music that I really fell in love with. That was my one. But yeah, One is one of my absolute favorites too. And what would you say was harder for you to learn, drums or guitar?
I spent most of the time developing drums over the past decade. Like learning double bass technique was actually really hard for me. It took me many years to really get that down and get good at it.
Could you explain double bass technique to the audience out there that might not know what that is?
Double bass is back in the 80s and the hair metal days, they had the two bass drums, side by side, and they would use both of their feet to do that. These days you have, maybe you can see mine. I've got my electric set up here. Oh, nice. There's a double pedal. I don't know if you can see that at all.
Oh, yeah, we can see it.
Part of it. But anyway, it's just the art of using your feet to play the bass drum, both of your feet. And these days it's incorporated a lot into metal, loud, heavy music, cool stuff. My technique that I primarily use is heel toe, so that way I'm getting 2 hits out of each stroke with each foot, and for me it just conserves energy. And I was in marching band, so I'm able to apply the same rudimentary knowledge from marching drums to my feet while I'm doing other stuff with my hands around the drum set. So that comes kind of naturally to do double stroke rolls and stuff like that. And I of course, I will do single stroke stuff when applicable, but primarily when it comes to speed, heel toe is where it's at. If you could hit up some YouTube videos on that and learn it, it's in my opinion, it's necessary.
Yeah.
It's a necessity.
We've had our fair share of drummers on this show before, and I love always asking them the same question. What would you say is the most misrepresented aspect of being a drummer? Because usually when you think of drummers, like, a lot of people think about they're kind of like the guy that's a little like crazy because he has so much energy on the drums and he's kind of a little out there. But what would you say is the biggest misconception that you've come to face when it comes to being a drummer?
What you just said, or the opposite, the drummers are considered to be lazy or kind of low IQ or dumb or something like that, and wild, of course, that also, because that's with most of the drummers that I associate with in my hometown and stuff like that. They're all really cool, really intelligent guys, just really cool guys.
Yeah.
They typically are very knowledgeable of music theory, and they apply that to their drums.
Well, I think it's also a severely underappreciated part of the band, because most average music fans who have like no idea of what the music structure is like and what it's like creating melodies and beats don't realize that the drum is basically the backbone of the band. You got to keep the beat down while everyone else does their part. But I mean, if you screw up, basically the whole band screws up, because they're all relying on you. And when you're performing live, do you ever feel that kind of added pressure of knowing like, oh my God, like I'm probably the one guy out of the band that like really needs to be as close to perfect as possible?
Oh, definitely. And some drummers do use metronomes on stage, but I never did. There was just too much going on. I never did it. So I always had to be sure not to rush or to drag anything, not to slow down, not to speed up or any of that, or any of that kind of stuff. Just to be as accurate as possible and to flow good with the crowd and with everyone that's watching and listening and everything. Because some of those people are dancing, so you don't want to interrupt that. You want them to be able to keep moving, doing their thing.
When you guys have like a set list down for when you're performing live, is there a certain way that you as a drummer kind of want to have the songs done? Because like maybe you might want to do like a faster song right off ahead so that you can kind of get your energy flowing, and then you want to do like a slower song to kind of like cool down. Is there like any method as to why you get a say into like what songs are in the order of the set list, as according to like maybe you're able to relax a little bit more and like when you can take breaks?
Honestly, usually if I'm performing drums with a group or a band, I'll be playing their songs and what I'm familiar with the practices and rehearsals that I've had with those people or that individual, whoever's music I'm drumming performing with. It really just depends. I've been doing it a while. I don't really tire out very easily or anything. So if I am asked for input on a set list with any particular artist or anything like that, basically I see it. You want to start with energy, and if you're going to do any kind of slow stuff, kind of do that towards the middle or building up towards the almost to the end, and then finish with energy. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Vintage Lights. How did that all form, and what are you up to currently with those guys?
Vintage Lights is basically it's a writing project of my own. Originally, it was going to be called Love Wolf, which we have a song called that based on that name and everything. The band was going to be called Love Wolf, but I was afraid that maybe that name could be misunderstood. People will be like, "What is that? What
you guys into bestiality or something?"
Yeah, like what kind of strange thing is that?
That is a great name, though, I must say. Love Wolf. That's a great... Anything that has wolf in it, to me, is just a great name.
Yeah. There's a lot of bands, a lot of indie bands out now that have the name Wolf incorporated in their name somewhere. But yeah, that was originally going to be the name, and I liked it a lot and everything, but like you said, like so many people of the world, they see that for the first time, they'd be like, what is that? But I thought Vintage Lights was cool. Yeah. It's not out there anywhere else other than like stores that sell vintage light bulbs. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a pretty cool name and pretty hard to confuse with anything other than a store that sells light bulbs. But Yeah, it's also based on a song off the debut album as well called Vintage Lights. And one day it just occurred to me, I was like, you know what? I'm going to end this Love Wolf confusion. Keep the song Love Wolf. It's a cool song or whatnot. What if we change the name to Vintage Lights? And pretty much everyone that I've asked or anything have agreed. So we ended up releasing the debut album as Vintage Lights, and everything's copyrighted to that. So I guess that's the name.
Can everyone find like this album on iTunes, Spotify? Is it available?
Yeah, it's pretty much everywhere on all those guys. Spotify, iTunes. It was released through CD Baby. Same thing as like Macklemore and countless other people that I know. It's really easy for independent artists and stuff to use. Very fair price, and they really look out for their artists, and they really help you a lot. So I recommend CD Baby, especially for anyone that's just starting out, because they can put you on Spotify and all that good stuff too. But yeah, it's downloadable everywhere. It's on YouTube for free, so just anywhere.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely make sure to give that a plug once we reach the end of here, but we still got a ways to go. So what would you say when you were forming this sort of project, what would you say was your biggest hurdle, first of all, and how did you overcome that?
That's a really good question. The biggest hurdle, when all this was first starting, when I first started writing the songs for Vintage Lights as a band, I had just recently at that time lost a very close friend, and unexpectedly, and it was a friend that always believed in me and my music and my performances and stuff like that, especially my drumming. He would come over and play drums and stuff. I would help him learn new things, and we would play, jam, we would switch off on drums and guitar. We were really close friends, and then, he ends up gone, and it definitely, the loss of him really inspired a lot of writing. I was just sitting there one day and just started writing the first song called "When," that's on the Vintage Lights debut album, and he definitely inspired that. It was a lot to do with his belief, and he was like, just keep doing it, man, keep doing what you're doing. It's great, and this and that. He always had positive things to say about it. So that song has a lot to do with, him, his energy, and his beliefs and stuff. And he helped me and my family and a lot of our shared friends and stuff like that. He helped so many people in so many ways and stuff. Very inspirational guy. So he inspired a lot of the first album. Yeah. Definitely.
So when you're coming up with lyrics, do you take them from more like day-to-day stuff that you might see, like if you're walking down the street and you hear someone say something, you're like, oh, that would make a great lyric, or do you maybe like take it from the news, or is it kind of like a mixture of both? Or here's another one, we've never had one person on here, but I'm waiting for that person to happen. Like, you always hear those stories where it's always that trope in movies where like the dude has a dream about like the perfect song, and then he's like, oh my god, I gotta write down those lyrics as soon as I wake up. Has that ever happened to you, or do you just do the first two?
Close. There've been plenty of times, like many of the cool lines that I have in the songs, because I write all the lyrics, all the composition, everything with Vintage Lights, I write and perform it all. Granted, a few other musicians will come in and do like some keyboard synthesizer stuff. Other than that, it's all me, and including the lyrics. So I think maybe I've got a couple lyric quotes from actual dreams that I've had while fully asleep. But many of them have happened while I've been laying there almost asleep, and then this thought will just go through my head like a cool phrase or a cool line or something. Because especially when I'm writing an album, I'm immersed in it. It's all I'm thinking about for months or however long it takes to write it. So I'm hearing this stuff in my head, and I'm almost asleep. I'll wake up. I'll just jolt awake. I'm like, oh my god, I got to write that down. That was a cool thing to say at that point of that song or whatever with that. So a lot of the lyrics come from near sleep, and sometimes some of the lyrics have happened when I just wake up in the morning. I'm like, that is perfect. Like I'll think it in my head. I'm like, that is the perfect lyric for that little piece I was missing there. But most of them, they don't really get really inspired like from news or anything like that. Most of them just come, with whatever song I'm writing. I'll feel kind of like while I'm making the melody or whatever, I'll feel what the song is about, what the song stands for, and then based on the vibe and the feeling that I get from it, because a lot of the stuff I just pull out of thin air. It will inspire the lyrics that way, and the syllables of it, the phrasing, the vocal phrasing that could happen within the realms of that song will inspire lyrics based on the syllables, the rhythm, what's available. Word-wise,
how important is rhyming to you? Because we've had guys on the show that say, well, rhyming is the bread and butter of my songwriting, and then other guys have said, rhyming's all right, but it's not everything. Where does that fall into your writing creative process?
It really depends. It really depends on the lyrics. In rap, it's obviously incredibly important. But me as like a synth pop kind of guy, pop rock kind of person, rhyming is definitely important, but to me, the feel of the words and how they come together with the melody matters most. And if they need to rhyme, then make sure that they do. But in many situations, it's okay while you're singing certain styles of music or whatever. Rhyming isn't necessarily 100%. You don't always have to rhyme.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to ask this. I haven't asked this before. When you're writing a song, do you have the title in mind when you start out, or is it kind of one of those things where at the end you look at the lyrics and then you're like, oh, what can I take from the lyrics as a title? How's that work?
Yeah, the latter. Normally, when I was younger, I would base a song on. I would think of the name of the song that I wanted and then write it based on that. Whole different writing style when I was a teenager. I was listening to Korn a lot back then and bands like that. So I've changed a lot over the years, especially when I started finally like seriously writing my own stuff. Basically, like I'm trying to think the best way. Well, it's kind of like a 50-50. Like sometimes the name will come from an actual lyric that's already in the song, or maybe the name will come from how, like you said, how the song makes me feel, what I gather from the lyrics, a name that hopefully will make sense with those lyrics and just fit it well. But yeah, sometimes it could be a word or words that come directly from the lyrics of the song itself. But usually, no, the name doesn't happen until long after the song's written. The name is usually the very last thing that happens.
And when it comes to your music, how important do you lay in the importance of kind of making it appeal to your fans, or are you one of those artists that say, like, I'm going to write what I want to write, and if the fans enjoy it, then they'll enjoy it?
Kind of both. I'm a people pleaser, so I want everyone to enjoy what I'm doing. I understand that you're not going to please everyone. There's people out there that just aren't going to like it. They're not going to dig it no matter what it sounds like. They just don't like it. But I was talking to a friend the other day, a musician friend, and I told him, one day, because I have a Southern accent, obviously, one day I would like to probably make kind of like a country-based album and stuff. Even though I don't really listen to country music much, I still would like to do that just because I don't think that any musician with the ability to see their dreams through or whatever, I don't think anyone should ever hold back. Like if you want to make a rap album, do it. Just do it. If you want to make a rock album, go for it. If you want to do some metal, whatever, just any genre at all. I used to believe in focusing and staying within one genre. And Vintage Lights is pretty solidly synth pop, synth rock. But that doesn't mean that the music won't get more poppy or more rock or more anything later on in the future. And it could always, just go around in circles. But the music that I personally like the most usually revolves around 80s synthwave stuff and that sort of thing. So my music sort of portrays that. And I like a lot of oldies and stuff like that too. And you can hear that sometimes in some vintage light stuff.
What part of the South are you from?
I'm from Tennessee.
Tennessee.
It's yes, southeastern.
Oh, yep. What one of the things that I really enjoyed about starting this podcast was that I'm from Minnesota. I'm right around the Minneapolis area, and I really enjoyed learning that Minneapolis has a huge metal scene. I would have never guessed in my entire life that in Minneapolis there's such a huge metal environment. In your hometown or in Tennessee in general, other than country, what would you say is the one genre that really dominates the region?
Believe it or not, most of the people around here that I associate with and know, whether they're musicians or not, no matter what they do for a living, not a lot of people around here listen to country music regularly. I mean, it's kind of 50-50, like half the population probably at least appreciates it, and the other half definitely does not. I've found that it seems more Northerners listen to country than Southerners.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, definitely. And I was
surprised.
by
Minnesota, yeah, that's all they listen to. In the farm country, basically, that's where they listen to it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you have a lot of other than country. What would you say would be the big genre up in Tennessee?
In Knoxville, the indie scene is really big. Knoxville, if you've heard of it, Johnny Knoxville, I guess, is from there. He's kind of like the one guy. But Quentin Tarantino's also from there.
Hey, well, I'm a huge college football guy, so I know all about the Volunteers and everything.
Okay, so you know about it.
Yeah.
That town, Knoxville, is like 40 minutes away from where I'm at. Mm-hmm. The music scene there is probably the best around here, surrounding a lot of indie stuff. There's actually a lot of metal also. There's a pretty decent handful of local rappers, and some of them are pretty good at what they do.
I was gonna say, wasn't Taylor Swift from Tennessee?
She may be Canadian, but her music was originally.
I thought she was from around the Tennessee area because I thought she was like around Nashville. I think it was. I might be mistaken. Yeah,
she might be. Jack White from the White Stripes lives in Nashville.
Yep. Yeah, because I was going to say, when people think about country music, they usually think about Nashville. That's like the big hub of country music, so that's probably the big situation down there. But when it comes to, I mean, obviously we ask this question every single podcast, but when it comes to performing live, we always hear about the high that kind of like musicians get, how it makes them feel amazing, just, putting in all that work, practicing their song a million times, then finally being able to play it in front of people and getting that positive feedback. How does that feel personally to you, and then especially to you, being that you write the lyrics and you come up with that, and everyone always talks about their song kind of being like their baby, because like they came up with it, and it being your personal own creation, how much more important does that make it performing live to you?
It's incredible. It's the best feeling in the world. I never feel more free than I do while I'm performing. Being in the studio recording the stuff is one thing, but it has a lot of pressure. They both have their own pressure. Performing and recording both, they both come with a lot of pressure, a lot of fear. I get scared every time, no matter what. I always get just a little bit scared at the beginning of every show. It always happens because like it's new people, it's new eyes, new ears watching me, and many of them are hearing it for the first time. And I'm really nervous because I'm a perfectionist, and I really want everyone to be pleased with what I do. And it's always kind of scary, and it usually takes about half a song to a song, maybe even 2 songs before I really loosen up. But once I get that feeling that you're describing, nothing really compares to it. No chemical high could really compete with it. It's just, to me, it's the best feeling in the world.
Are there any pre-show traditions or rituals that you do? Like we have some guys on here that say like we take like 2 shots, or we have a certain amount to drink of anything, or are there any like rituals, like since you said you're kind of a little superstitious, are there any rituals that you take before each show?
Basically mine is a ritual of perfection. I just like to scan everything, make sure all the drums are set up correctly, make sure all the instruments are tuned up and stuff, and that's just part of my thing. I'm alone when I do that. I usually hire drummers. So depending on who the drummer is, sometimes they hover around their kit. They stay back there with it. But I'll talk to them or, whatever. Basically, I kind of treat it like a business. I treat it kind of, just like a business entity. So I want everything to go smoothly, and I like to make sure that everything is just, there's not going to be any kind of technical difficulties or anything like that to happen. Occasionally you will get the feedback and stuff from the speakers, but I'll try to prevent anything bad from happening while the performance is about to go on.
What we always love on this show, hearing first concert stories. What was your first show that you performed at, and do you remember kind of what it was like?
Well, my first performance was probably when I was about 2, maybe 3 years old. My grandparents got me this toy electric guitar with an amp and a microphone, and they told me, "Hey, play that song that you sing all the time." I can't remember what the song was, but that I remember it still to this day. It could even be subconsciously a reason that I get that little bit of fear right before, because I think I may have them, because I can still feel the emotion that I felt at such a young age. I was addicted. Like, that was me from then on out. Like, I was a performer, absolutely, and wouldn't fully be happy doing anything else. That definitely, them buying me that guitar and then having me perform like that. That I consider that my first real performance, and with a band, my first performance, and I was a drummer by this time. The first performance was at like a local coffee house. There were probably maybe 50 or 60 people there, which was a lot to me. I loved it. It was a rush. It was an adrenaline rush. The music was kind of indie-like. I kind of overplayed the drums a little bit with that band, but they loved it. They wanted me to. So I was just like a little caveman. Just lots of speed, lots of rock and roll and stuff. So it was a cool clash of sound. So and that band was called Intricate, and I was in high school during the formation of that band. So that was when I started performing, with other people and as a band. And then bagpipes kicked in while I was also in high school, and I would perform them basically just in front of other students and stuff. And ended up on my graduation night, I played bagpipes in front of like a couple thousand people. That was definitely scary, because these are a lot of kids' parents and grandparents and stuff like that. All these kids are graduating, and I'm up here, and they're all looking at me. That was my first big experience, I guess.
How crazy did the ladies go for the high school bagpipe player?
It worked for me. It definitely did.
I was going to say, that's one of those things where you won't see it so often that I'd be like, oh my God, that's interesting. I got to go up and talk to him or something like that. But yeah, when you're done performing and a fan comes up to you and says like, hey, I really enjoyed your show and I really enjoyed your music, how much of that just really sticks with you when a fan comes up and says, knowing that like you wrote the music and it's coming out of your brain, and that you really brought joy to someone? I mean, how do you take it with you for a certain amount of time and then just kind of say, okay, I got to focus on letting it go and like focusing on the next show, or do you just let it sit in the back of your head where you can just enjoy it?
It stays in the back. It stays there with me. It's like it's in my soul. Mm-hmm. I can still feel it, and just to hear you talk about it, like I see everyone's face that has ever praised my music or anything that I've done. Like I haven't forgotten. Mm-hmm. And if any of you that have praised me or helped me along the way, or watching this or listening to this, thank you so much for what you've done for me. I've not forgotten you, and I never will. As soon as you started saying that, I started seeing some faces of some people that have approached me any of the times that I've been doing music, like anytime after a show or anything like that, and told me that they really liked it or whatever. I can see their face. I don't know their names, many of them, the strangers, the people that I had never met before or seen again since. But I remember them too. I remember everyone.
I am going to tell a quick similar story. It has nowhere near in comparison to you, but for one of my friend's 21st birthdays, I got very, very inebriated, and it was karaoke night, and I sang Take Me Home Tonight, Eddie Money, and I had two people at the end come up and say that was the best version of Take Me Home Tonight they've ever heard in their entire lives. So when I say that, I can kind of think of I can picture their two faces exactly, even though I was really inebriated, just because it meant a lot to me. So I understand like 1/100,000th of a percentage of what you probably understand from that happening. But yeah, I definitely get in a very low percentage of what you meant when you said that. But now we're going to go to our Inside the Actors Studio kind of portion of the show. This is, from all the feedback I've got, this is our favorite part of the show, where I ask you a few questions and we get your answers, and I have a poll where eventually, once we reach, I think, about like 50 shows, I think this is show 21, once I reach about 50, I'll probably publish the results, and then we'll see if we have any people that have guessed the same ones or said the same ones, and we'll have a winner. So for the first question, it's, out of all the songs that have ever been written in the history of music, what is one song that you personally wish you would come up with, and why?
I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen. I feel like that song, I feel like there could be scientific research to prove that that's one of the best songs ever made. It's a very simple song with a lot of emotion in it. There's not a lot going on musically with that song. Kind of a hard, consistent drum beat, just because it would require chops. But he had Max Weinberg back there doing that, so he could definitely handle his drum section. But that song, "I'm on Fire" by Bruce Springsteen, is just it's one of my all-time favorite songs. Anytime I hear it on the radio, I'm just like, yes, these people get it. It's just such a simple song, but it really strikes me to the core. I really wish I wrote that song.
I'm going to freak everyone out on this podcast. When I was driving to work this morning, I played that song.
Wow.
Yeah. It's one of those songs, too, where, I mean, like you said, it is so simple. Like, the beat doesn't change really at all. It's just a simple guitar riff and a minor bit of drums in the background. And it's just, his lyrics are kind of like haunting and true. I mean, it's like some of this old type of music that I've talked to a lot of people about that's just died, where he tells a story with that song. It's not like just singing about random things where it's just about, like making money and like having girlfriends and stuff like that. It's actually just telling a story. So, I mean, I agree. That is a great song. And I have another fun trivia fact. When Bruce Springsteen recorded his Dancing in the Dark music video, it was in St. Paul, and my uncle is in that music video in the background. You can barely see him, but he's in the crowd in the background. So I always see that whenever the music video comes on, like MTV or something like that, old MTV Rewind or something.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, okay, our second question is, out of all the artists, dead or alive, you can pick either one. If you could perform one show with, who would it be and why?
That is a hard question. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing like 400 no longer with us musicians right now.
We can do top 5 if you want.
I would say Elvis Presley, but he wasn't. He was more of a solo kind of person. Like, there were other musicians there, definitely, but he was the one with the spotlight for sure. So it would have to be someone that was actually more band oriented. So I guess I would choose. I've actually never really thought about this.
Don't say Nickelback.
No.
No. I'm waiting for one guy to say that, and then I'm shutting off this whole podcast. I'm just quitting.
No. I've seen them live before, but that was I was with a girl, and we just had tickets, so we went.
It's understandable.
Yeah. The show actually wasn't that bad, but
I mean,
I don't think I've listened to them since.
I will admit, is a good song that I enjoy listening to. I'll admit that. Yeah.
Yeah, good production. Yeah. Good production. I think it would be really cool to perform with. Depending on what I was doing, if I was going to be playing drums for somebody, I think I would want to play drums for Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison, yep.
If I was playing guitar with somebody, probably maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan, someone really bluesy.
Yeah.
Someone that you could just jam with, or the Allman Brothers as a band. If I was going to be singing along with someone, I would like to perform with. You did say living or dead. Yeah. I would love to do a collab with Churches, with Lauren Mayberry.
Yeah.
That would be rad.
Yeah, that would be.
She's already got 2 guys in the band singing, though, so it'd be kind of strange to have a third.
Yeah.
But, whatever. I would do it if it was an option.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so out of all the venues on the planet, if you could play at one, where would it be and why?
Honestly, I would love to play at either of the Amoeba record stores in Hollywood, California.
Oh, okay.
Although that's not really a big, like, huge venue, like it's a record store. They're selling product in there. It's kind of a small stage, and there's smaller stages and bigger stages than that out there. And that's not a huge venue by any means, but there's just something about that place. I've always loved the vibe from every video I've ever seen from there. Arenas are cool and everything, but I definitely would love to play at the Amoeba.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. All right, guilty pleasure song that most people would never think that you'd enjoy when they first met you, or even people in your band that know you.
I don't know if Fall Out Boy songs would be considered guilty pleasures. No. I don't know if I should go there. Maybe
you can, but it's like I've had so many people that have like told me like 80s rock songs are like guilty pleasure. I was like, those aren't guilty pleasure. Those are still popular.
Really good.
Yeah.
Let me think. Something that would throw people off that they wouldn't expect.
We had Backstreet Boys' "I Want It That Way," and that one's taken the cake so far.
That song has been in my head all day long.
Yeah.
All day. I was in the shower this morning, and that song was on repeat in my head. I don't know why.
It's a catchy song. I give them that.
It is a catchy song. I must have heard it recently somewhere, like walking by a store or something. I don't know how it ended up in there, but yeah, it was in there. And I was thinking to myself, that actually is a pretty good song. I bet they felt on fire when they were recording that and when it released and stuff, because they were such a big deal.
Oh yeah.
During those boy band days and stuff. But guilty pleasure for me. I like the song "Like a Virgin" by Madonna a lot. I think it's a great song.
It's a great song, yeah. I mean, Madonna's early days, yeah. I won't be blasting that music in my car, but it's one of those things where I'm home alone and like I'm looking over my shoulder to make sure no one's around, then I might blast it for sure.
Yeah, Madonna hit pretty hard back in the day.
Yeah, people forget, especially people in my generation really tend to forget how huge she was when she first came out. I mean, she's the biggest selling female artist of all time, and there's a reason for that. So, guilty pleasure genre that you enjoy?
Bluegrass.
Bluegrass? Okay.
Yep.
We had a K-pop, and so far, ladies and gentlemen, that still takes it.
Yeah, K-pop wins.
Yeah. All right. So, before we end here, I have two questions that I always ask everyone, and I like to write down kind of the responses. So if you see me writing it down, don't feel offended or anything. But when starting a band, what would you say is the most important quality to have in order to be a successful band?
Chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. When starting a band, it's okay to be honest with yourself and with other people. If you're going to be auditioning people, some people just aren't going to be the right fit, and you got to let them go. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person, but sometimes they're just not going to work for your band or what you're trying to achieve. That doesn't mean maybe later on down the line they might be a more appropriate fit for what you want to do, or maybe they need you for what they're doing or something like that. So it's okay to be honest with yourself and people, but definitely chemistry. Like when you're playing with somebody who meshes well with you in whatever instrument, whatever you're doing. You guys naturally, when to shift the song, where to take it next, and how to end the song. That's always kind of hard, especially if you're with a jam band or whatever. It seems like the songs will go on forever, but chemistry is definitely the biggest deal. And chemistry, to me, is probably 70 to 80% music. Music playing togetherness, and the other 20-30% is, are you a crazy drug addict? Because I can't be around that.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go, unfortunately. But it's definitely about 70-80% music ability and playing together, and the other part of chemistry is outside of music. How well do you fit together with this person? Like, I know bands, especially bands that have been together a long time, the members of the bands don't really hang out with each other, though they pretty much consider each other brothers, brothers of the stage, brothers of music. they come together well on stage, but then they go their separate ways when the show's over. That's fine, you know. Sometimes that's just naturally how it goes. But chemistry also has, you know, it has a lot to do with how well outside of the music that you work. If you guys are good for each other in a sense that you don't bring negativity to each other, you don't negatively interfere with each other in any kind of way outside of rehearsal and stuff like that. Like everything, it definitely needs to be good on and off stage for sure.
So, if you could talk to yourself maybe like 5 or 10 years, either one of those ago, and give yourself any piece of advice when it comes to your musical career, what would that be?
I don't know if YouTube was around yet, but I would have told myself to hit YouTube a lot harder and learn as much as possible on, you know, guitar and stuff like that. Because I've only really started focusing on guitar majorly for like the past probably 3 or 4 years now. So I wish that I would have done more YouTube research back then on, you know, playing guitar and learning fast tricks and stuff like that and cool stuff. What I would definitely say to myself is I would throw some names at myself of some people to avoid, and I would tell myself about some people that I had to look forward to, and I would tell myself to just do it. Just do it now.
Yeah, that's great.
Record.
I mean, that's the thing right here. I was a little nervous about like starting this podcast when I did, and then just do it. I mean, believe me, I wish I had started doing this like 2 or 3 years ago. It would have been a lot more fun. But when you when's your next show that you guys are performing at? Is it soon, or would you like to plug anything like that?
There's nothing coming up anytime soon. I'm working on the second album right now. It's about halfway done. And honestly, I've had a lot of fun performing the first album, Beautifully Nasty. It's been great. It's been great seeing new responses from new people that I've never met in other towns and stuff. And like you said earlier, with them coming up and telling me that they liked it or whatever, it's amazing. I remember all their faces. But yeah, it's currently most of the time has been focused on that second album, getting that done. Like it's to the lyric writing stage right now, which is usually the last thing that happens. Because like I said, you know, I compose and write it all. So I make all these beats and music and stuff, melodies and all that. And then the lyrics usually come later on. Now, some of the lyrics will come from some thoughts and stuff, phrases or ideas that I wrote down. That's another thing that I would say to myself is to write everything down, every thought, every invention, everything that goes through your mind. If it seems valuable in any kind of way, write it down. That way you have it documented for the future. Because I've pulled a lot of lyrics out of some stuff that I wrote, you know, a couple years before the album came out. Some of the lyrics, you know, were inspired from previous writings and stuff. So documentation is great. Definitely do that. Yeah. But yeah, I'm hoping that by the time of the next performance that I can go ahead and throw a couple of songs, like the next album will be closer to finish, so I can throw a couple of those songs into the mix and perform them as well and see what kind of reactions I get out of people. And also to go ahead and start building up the hype for the next album. Hopefully people will look forward to that. I really do. It's going really well so far. So
will you let us know absolutely when you're planning on releasing that album, and I'll give you a plug for it. I'll announce it. And as always, I mean, you can find Beautifully Nasty on iTunes. You can find it on Spotify. And I'll definitely leave the links to everything down below. I'll leave a link to Vintage Lights' Facebook page, and if it's all right with you, I'd leave a link to your profile if that's all right. If they want to contact you, maybe for information or whatever, yeah, I'll leave Dustin's information down below. And Dustin, you're more than welcome to be on here anytime you want. Anytime you got to have anything plugged, you just let me know, or you can come on the show. You're more than welcome to. And I mean, I wish you guys nothing but the best of success. I mean, you definitely seem like you guys are up. You guys are on your way, and you guys have a bright future ahead of you. And yeah, man, I just want to say good luck to you. And I mean, we're all rooting for you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is Ryan Johnson with DD on the Spot signing off. As always, if you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and you have a great night.